I really don't know if I've been harping on this enough. It's one of those situations where I'm just kind of like, okay, there's so much to talk about over, Nintendo Direct weekend. There's been so much to talk about, so many like conspiracies to cover, so many like pretendos to address, so many like games to talk about and hype up and like defend from the community. There's been so much to talk about that like I really have lost track of like what I've been saying over the past couple of days. And I feel like the big thing I noticed when it comes to these Nintendo Directs, especially when it's coming to Nintendo YouTubers, is that a lot of them are coming out right out of the gate saying, "Oh, this is going to be the last major Switch focused Direct ever." Right? Like after this point, we are going to be getting nothing but new hardware. Oh, right out of the gate. This is going to be the last time we ever hear about the Nintendo Switch. They're going to replace that thing in 6 months. Like I legit like watched Max Dude, and he's legit trying to tell us that like, oh man, how long are the dates coming back? How long until the Switch gets replaced? Like I'm not seeing anything past 6 months. That's kind of indicative, isn't it, guys? And I'm just sitting here thinking that like they'll just do another direct. Like, are you serious? Like, even if the hypothetical scenario, like, no, they will not release the Switch 2 like the new Nintendo console in 6 months. Like that just isn't going to happen, right? They have to promote it, they have to get it in stores, they have to get like third parties on board. It's going to be like you're going to see like real signs that it's happening like a couple of years in advance, and we haven't seen it. If anything, we've seen the exact opposite of people being very clear. The Nintendo has been very clear about this, that we can't expect a new piece of Nintendo hardware soon. But every single YouTuber, Player Essence, Switch Force, Game Explain, Review Tech USA, like all of these people are coming out trying to tell us that like, ooh, this is going to be the last major game for the Switch. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, that's not even a big game. That's the last game we're gonna get ever before we get the Switch 2, before we get this new powerful piece of Nintendo hardware. Like the same narrative we've been getting since like 2018. Right? Like, oh, don't buy a Switch now. We're gonna get a better version later, right? Like, oh, hold out, bros. We're gonna see a better piece of hardware from Nintendo later. Like, it's odd how often you kind of see this stuff happen. And looking back on it, it's weird to see like how many of these like controversies have become completely forgotten. Like I remember when like the 3DS first came out, and there was a serious movement, especially around the time period that Kid Icarus Uprising released. Like there was a serious push among these kind of people, like trying to tell us that like I will never buy a 3DS until it has a second analog stick. Right? There was a serious push for that. There was a serious like there was this serious attempt at trying to act as if like the 3DS was doomed if it didn't have a second stick, and that's why the Vita was gonna outperform it, and how Nintendo was doomed and stuff like that. Like that was the argument at the time, right? But like, yeah, looking how popular the 3DS ended up being and how the Vita bombed, it killed Sony's handheld division. Like it's weird looking back on that now. Just like it's weird looking back on the Switch Pro narrative. Seeing people insist it was happening for like 4 years straight. Like, oh, don't buy a Switch now. They're going to release the Switch Pro soon. It's going to have all the third party games. And then what happens? The 6 year mark rolls around, right? Well, actually, I think it was the 5 year mark. The 5 year mark rolls around, and what happens? People stop talking about the Switch Pro. Oh, it was canceled because of chip shortages. And then they start talking about the Switch 2, right? The new Nintendo Switch, the sequel to the Nintendo Switch, the Electric Boogaloo, right? The new Nintendo platform that's going to have all of these big budget games that are going to be way better than anything Nintendo is putting out right now. Forget Detective Pikachu Returns, forget Super Mario Bros. Wonder, forget like another Code R collection, forget Princess Peach Showtime, forget Unicorn Overlord, forget all of that stuff. Like none of that is a big major release. Like the Switch 2 is where all of Nintendo's focus is going now. That's why we're not seeing any good games. That is like legit the narrative. Like in order to write off, like they are just aggressively downplaying all of these great looking games. no matter the genre, the budget, the style, whether it's a new entry or a remake, whether it's a returning franchise or a new IP, whether they've played it before or not, like every single time we see this song and dance of like pretending as if the Switch is on its last legs, pretending as if it's failing, pretending as if no one is going to continue supporting this console after the Switch Pro comes after the next Nintendo platform comes out. Like it just isn't going to happen. Like even after the next Nintendo console comes out, we can expect a reasonable amount of support for the Switch. It's too popular to simply just hang out to dry the way these people like to pretend it will, right? Like it is going to stick around, much like the 3DS did, like long past its initial expiration date, or like the preconceived expiration date that these people like attach to it. Like, oh, hardware dies after 6 years. Nobody continues supporting hardware after that point. And then like we got Samus Returns in like what 2018, and that led to was it 2017 or 2018? Like we got Samus Returns, and that led to like a brand new Metroid game from like the same studio. Like how is that in any way, shape, or form like considered a failure, right? Like we saw these people like bend over backwards trying to declare like Samus Returns a failure back when it first came out, and like declaring like another Metroid 2 remake to be far superior. And eventually Nintendo made Dread, and that was like very popular, right? Like even though these people don't want to admit it, right? Like we keep seeing this like pattern just repeat itself. Like all these great looking Nintendo games, Splatoon 3, Princess Peach. Like these aren't small announcements. They aren't. But like I am seeing so many people come out and saying, "Oh, that looks like a PS2 game." Splatoon has a single player campaign. Like these guys don't know the basic aspects of these franchises that they claim to enjoy, right? Like, and we see this over and over again. Like they try making excuses, like, oh, Splatoon screwed up by messing up the release schedule of new content and stuff like that. But that's really not true. Like in my experience, when it comes to these people and their like aggressive hatred for Splatoon, they were never fans to begin with, right? We keep going through this pattern of just these guys coming out and just trying to say that Splatoon looks disappointing, that it doesn't have a ton of content, that it won't be remembered, that it won't be popular. And now look at it. It's one of Nintendo's most popular IPs. Like, it is some of the most innovative stuff we've seen from them in a very long time. And we're still, to this day, seeing a significant portion of the community on YouTube like deny it. And this kind of goes into what I've been saying for a long time, in that like you can no longer trust YouTubers to give an accurate assessment as to like how popular something is, or how well received it is, or whether something is going to have an audience, because these guys complain no matter what, right? How long have we like waited for a new F-Zero game? How long have we been asking for it? And what do they do? What do they do the instant Nintendo like releases a new one? Like just complain about it, right? Like I cannot begin to tell you the sheer amount of people who like got upset at F-Zero 99 simply for existing. Like, oh, they could have put the resources towards this for a brand new F-Zero. Like, no respect at all for like, the process of making this, and like the games, and just no. The game is good. Okay, I've spent enough time with F-Zero 99 to tell you it is a legitimately good game. As an F-Zero fan, I am very, very happy with it. And seeing so many people like go after that, go after Pokemon, go after like everything they're doing right now, it's embarrassing. It really is. And I have to wonder, what's the excuse going to be like next year, right? When like we get another Nintendo Direct and we start talking about like games that are coming out in the summer and like the winter of that year. Like I can pretty much guarantee you that like uh there won't be a new piece of Nintendo hardware by the end of the year. It just um I feel like right now a lot of people have been gaslit into thinking it's like a guarantee by like these YouTubers and stuff like that, from game journalists who are pushing an agenda that they don't want Switch to outsell PS2. Like like people have kind of gaslit themselves into thinking like new hardware is like an inevitability. right? That it is going to happen, and there's just no real indication from that from Nintendo or anyone else. And unfortunately, because like it's such a long way away, next year, we're talking about like a year and 3 months, like it's such a long way away. Like you can't really say that there won't be either. So it's this thing where like every time that like the Switch 2 is like promised and then doesn't happen, right? They just push the date back. Like we saw this happen this year, right? We saw this happen with like, oh, Tears of the Kingdom will be the last game on Switch. It's gonna be cross-gen. It's gonna have more features and run better on the new piece of Nintendo hardware. There was like a real coordinated push to push that agenda, right? And for the Spawncast and those guys, and like when it didn't happen, they just pivoted to saying that like, oh man, it's gonna be next year, like it's gonna happen next year, and I. I just don't know why we're supposed to listen to these people or care about what they say. Like, if a new piece of Nintendo hardware comes out, fine. But like, I'm tired of like every single Nintendo Direct, these guys like coming out and like mostly talking about something that doesn't exist yet. Like making theories and like conspiracies. Like, talk about the games that are actually coming out. Okay, talk about another Code R. Talk about Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Talk about like anything. Like talk about the actual direct. Don't come out and like try and say, "Oh, this is going to be the last Nintendo Switch direct ever," when that's clearly 100% not going to happen. That is just so delusional. It's off-putting. Like I just had to like make a statement about this because I've been observing this from a lot of people. I'm very tired of hearing about Switch 2. I'm very tired about the narrative. I'm very tired of game journalists and YouTubers like trying desperately to aggressively go after everything Nintendo does. Like I believe 100% that it does need to stop.